Moving on in other news, India and the United States still have major differences on taking the next steps in the nuclear deal. The US Secretary of State Hillary Clinton pushed India on the nuclear liability issue in Delhi on Tuesday, saying India's domestic laws should conform to an international convention where suppliers are hardly held liable for an accident. Indian officials were surprised because India's legislation is much tougher. As Clinton said, issues on the civil nuclear front still remain unresolved.
Behind the smiles, major differences between India and the United States on the next steps in the nuclear deal. While repeating the US assurance that the NSG restrictions on sensitive technologies would not affect India, Hillary Clinton bowled this googly. India, she said, should get the International Atomic Watchdog, the IAEA, to ensure that its domestic nuclear liability law is compatible with an international convention that India is ratifying later this year. That convention, which gives India access to international funds, barely holds suppliers accountable in case of an accident, while India's domestic law does, hurting the interests of American companies.
We would encourage engagement with the International Atomic Energy Agency to ensure that the liability regime that India adopts by law fully conforms with the international requirements under the convention.
Government sources told NDTV they were surprised by Mrs. Clinton's statement. They say it's not the IAEA's job to ensure the compatibility of laws with international treaties. New Delhi has ruled out any change in the domestic legislation, and the rules for nuclear companies to do business here are still being worked out. While Hillary Clinton's statement on the NSG and ENR restrictions hasn't really changed much from what the Americans have already said, it's her statement on the nuclear liability law and the fact that India's domestic legislation should comply with the international framework, which is not as tough on suppliers, that has raised eyebrows here in Delhi. This continues to remain a sticking point in full civil nuclear cooperation between India and the United States. In New Delhi, Nidhi Razdan for NDTV.
NDTV's cricket app. Android and iPhone, fastest scorecard, special analysis, and much more. Download free. ndtv.com/apps.